unrelated to improving the game, such as marketing fees and travel perks. What? We will continue to engage at the bargaining table in hopes of reaching an agreement that strengthens officiating overall and is ultimately best for the game. However, given the union's refusal to discuss material terms, the rapidly approaching expiration of the current agreement, we are compelled to take steps to ensure football continues uninterrupted this season.
That frustration you just heard, that's coming from someone who lived through the last referee disaster in 2012. And right now, we're headed toward an even bigger crisis. The NFL and the NFL Referees Association are in a standoff that could fundamentally change how professional football is officiated. And what Pat McAfee just proposed might sound crazy at first, but when you look at what's actually happening behind closed doors, it starts to make a disturbing amount of sense.
All right, they'd like to see the referees go through these programs, training, blah, 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 embrace technology, and the Referees Association, they don't want nothing to do with it. They want everything to just stay the same. Well, that's a disaster, okay? The officiating is not good like it is. Now, granted, it's going to be damn disastrous if they get to the point of a referee lockout or strike or whatever it is they're going to end up doing on either side.
Here's what's actually on the table. The NFL wants referees to go through mandatory training programs, embrace new technology for better accuracy, and submit to performance-based accountability measures. The Referees Association has refused to negotiate on any of it for nearly 2 years. Instead, according to NFL Executive Vice President Jeff Miller's statement released Thursday, the union is focused on demands for marketing fees and upgraded travel perks, not better officiating, not accuracy improvements, marketing fees, and first-class flights. Meanwhile, the current collective bargaining agreement is rapidly approaching expiration, and the league has already started compiling lists of replacement officials from college and high school ranks.
What's that called whenever you break the strike? They call you something. A scab. Nobody wanted to be a scab. So any college ref that could potentially be an NFL ref didn't want to do it because they didn't want to fucking piss off the union. They want to be a scab. Okay, scabs are people that break union and go work whenever a strike is happening or whatever the case. So we had junior high and high school fucking refs that knew they had no chance of being NFL refs, reffing NFL games. That can't happen. That cannot happen. But we also can't just hand over complete control and lack of accountability to these refs. We need to work together for the good of ball. For the good of fucking ball.
And that's the nightmare scenario everyone's trying to avoid, because we've seen this movie before. In 2012, when the NFL locked out the regular officials, they brought in replacements from lower-level college conferences, and even high school. The result was the Fail Mary, that infamous blown call in the Packers-Seahawks game that became a national embarrassment. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was 3 weeks of incompetent officiating, where basic spots, out-of-bounds calls, and penalty enforcement were consistently botched. Pat McAfee was in the league during that disaster. He watched junior high referees try to officiate NFL games because legitimate college officials refused to cross the picket line and become scabs. Nobody with aspirations of becoming an NFL referee wanted to burn that bridge with the union, so the league got whoever was willing to take the job, regardless of qualification.
Hey, now, okay, I get it. You bring in people that's been involved with the game. They're more athletic. Some of these referees, sometimes you're like, should he be on the field? Question mark. So, okay, I understand you're thinking about the athletic side of it too. They can keep up with what's going on. They know what they're looking at. Yada, 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 yada. Can you imagine Michael Irvin trying to be I'm going to be unbiased about a Cowboys game. Michael out there, first down. You're like, Mike, he's 2 foot short, dude. No, hey, what are you on, coke? Wait, me? No, he's 2 foot short.
Now here's where McAfee's proposal gets interesting. He's suggesting the NFL create a pipeline for retired players to become officials. The logic is straightforward. These are people who understand the game at the highest level. They're athletic enough to keep up with the pace. They know what they're looking at in real time, and they don't have existing loyalties to the current referee union structure. But there's an obvious problem with this approach. Can you imagine Michael Irvin trying to remain impartial while officiating a Cowboys game? Or any former player refereeing games involving their old team, division rivals, or former teammates? The potential for bias is massive. These aren't people who spent careers learning to be neutral arbiters. These are competitors whose entire professional identity was built around winning for their team.
They're kind of not wrong here, all right? They're not wrong. Quote, in almost 2 years of negotiations, the union has made no effort to work with us on the goal that we should all share, ensuring an officiating culture that's centered around performance and accountability. Well, here's the other thing. The NFL needs to embrace the idea of paying referees well and full time. And I don't think the NFL wants to do that, but I don't know if the referees would want to do it, because a lot of them have these successful careers as lawyers and shit away from the NFL.
And this is what makes the current situation so frustrating. The NFL's demands aren't unreasonable. They want officials who are committed to improving their craft, who will use available technology to get calls right, and who accept accountability when they make mistakes. That's not asking too much when you're officiating a multi-billion-dollar league where a single blown call can determine playoff seeding. But the Referees Association is treating this like the league is attacking their livelihoods, when in reality, the NFL is trying to prevent the kind of public relations disasters that happen when officiating becomes so inconsistent that fans start believing games are rigged. And that's not hyperbole anymore. When 10% of your fan base genuinely believes outcomes are predetermined because the officiating is that bad, you have a credibility crisis.
There would be a potential issue of remaining unbiased and impartial. Now, you may have a guy that was in the league 1 or 2 years. Okay. I mean, doesn't have a lot of loyalty to anybody. I could sort of see that. You know? I guess. But you're not going to get Big Ten and SEC refs. You can't get the big time, because they know they're the future NFL refs. So they're not going to take the side of the league against the union. That's not going to happen. The association union. You get my point. So that's interesting. Everything that Pat McAfee said here, I agree with. The ex-player thing, you'd have to really watch how.
The retired player idea would need serious safeguards if it were ever implemented. You'd have to focus on guys who only played 1 or 2 seasons, who don't have deep team loyalties, who washed out early enough that they don't carry grudges. Even then, you're taking people whose instinct is to compete and asking them to be neutral observers. That's a fundamental psychological shift that takes years of training to develop properly. But here's why McAfee is even floating this idea, because the alternative is worse. If the Referees Association forces a work stoppage, the NFL won't be able to get quality replacements from the college ranks. Big Ten and SEC officials know they're the future pipeline to the NFL. They're not going to jeopardize that relationship by crossing the union line. So the league will be stuck with officials from lower divisions who don't have the experience, the athleticism, or the split-second decision-making skills required for this level of play.
We'll be looking for yada, yada, yada. It's not a bad thought outside the box. I just don't know. These refs have got to embrace wanting to get better at what they do. You know, seriously, some of these games, again, I talked about this the other day, when you are getting to the point that 10% of your fandom believes it's rigged because the officiating is so poor, you got a problem on your hands. Look, NFL's going to be great. Oh, they're the kings. Till they have that one big-ass scandal. Big old ugly scandal. Tell me what you think.
And that brings us to the core issue that nobody wants to address directly. NFL referees are part-time employees. Most of them have successful careers as lawyers, business executives, or other professionals outside of football. They referee games on weekends, and that's it. The NFL has never committed to making officiating a full-time, year-round position with commensurate salaries. And the referees haven't pushed for that either, because many of them don't want to give up their primary careers. So you have a situation where the most important league in American sports is officiated by people who treat it as a well-paid side gig. They're not studying film full-time. They're not in the building working with replay technology and rule changes 40 hours a week. They show up, call games, and go back to their real jobs.
All right, black and white sports supporters. Well, this is interesting. You guys know I've made a couple of videos on this. This is going to become a bigger and bigger story. The NFL and the NFL Referees Association, which is their version of a players union, referees union, they're headed towards a battle. And the NFL is already getting their ducks in a row, looking at low-level college refs, high school refs. The last time they had this situation that led to the Fail Mary, they're already calling this the Fail Mary too. I shit you not. They're already calling it that.
Here's what's going to happen next. Both sides will continue negotiations, but the NFL has already shown its hand by publicly announcing they're compiling replacement official lists. That's not a negotiating tactic. That's preparation for an actual work stoppage. The league is willing to endure another Fail Mary situation rather than give the Referees Association complete control over accountability measures, and maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe the only way to force real change is to let the system break completely, let fans see just how bad officiating can get with unqualified replacements, and create enough public pressure that both sides have to come to the table with serious proposals. Because the current system isn't working. When referees miss obvious calls in playoff games, there's no real accountability. When they blow a crucial spot that changes the outcome of a game, they might get downgraded for a week or two, but they're back on the field with no meaningful consequences. The union has protected its members from any serious performance standards, and the NFL has allowed it because they didn't want to deal with another 2012 situation. But we're past that point now. The officiating has gotten bad enough that it's affecting the integrity of the product. Fans are openly questioning whether games are rigged. Coaches are getting fined for criticizing officials, but the officials face no penalties for being objectively wrong on reviewable calls. That's not sustainable. The Referees Association needs to understand that protecting bad officials hurts everyone, including the good officials who are trying to do the job right. When you refuse to implement accountability measures, when you fight against using technology to get calls correct, when you prioritize travel perks over performance improvements, you're telling everyone that you care more about protecting the union than about the quality of the game. And the NFL needs to commit to making officiating a full-time profession with appropriate compensation. You can't expect part-time employees to perform at the same level as full-time athletes and coaches who dedicate their entire lives to football. If you want elite officiating, you need to create elite positions with elite pay and elite standards. Pat McAfee's retired player proposal is creative, but it's a band-aid on a broken system. What we really need is a complete restructuring of how officials are trained, evaluated, compensated, and held accountable. That means full-time positions, year-round film study, mandatory technology training, transparent performance reviews, and real consequences for repeated mistakes. Will we get that? Probably not. What we'll likely get is another contentious negotiation that results in a short-term deal, followed by more years of inconsistent officiating and growing fan frustration, until we're right back here again in 5 years having the same conversation. Unless something breaks, unless the Referees Association actually forces a work stoppage, and we get to see just how bad replacement officials can be, and the public outcry becomes loud enough that both sides have no choice but to implement real reforms. So where do you stand on this? Should the NFL cave to the union's demands to avoid another Fail Mary situation? Or should they hold the line on accountability measures, even if it means bringing in unqualified replacements short term? Because one way or another, this is coming to a head before the season starts. Drop your take in the comments.